A Buckeye legend leaves us much too soon. Welcome into Ohio State Buckeyes Live here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate all of you being here, and we especially appreciate these three for being here each and every Wednesday, 1:30 Eastern Time. But, of course, subscribe and hit the bell for the notifications so you know when we are live each and every week. And, of course, we're referring to Ohio State quarterback DWAYNE Haskins. Tragic situation, leaves us at the age of 24. Steve, I'll include myself with the rest of the viewers and the fan base who, of course, watched all the touchdown passes and the remarkable offensive performances by Ohio State under DWAYNE Haskins' leadership in 2018. But you, Tony, Kevin, got to see a bit of a different side in dealing with him during interviews and so forth. So, really, I'll leave the floor to you in regards to your thoughts about DWAYNE Haskins on and off the field.
Yeah, tremendously sad, obviously, over what's happened. I was covering a AAU basketball tournament in Indianapolis this weekend when my son called about 11 a.m. Saturday to say, "Did you hear that DWAYNE Haskins had died?" And I just couldn't believe it. And then you log on to the internet, you see the reports that are coming out, the different things, and again, the details of what happened to him. We're now 4 or 5 days later, and we still don't have a lot of clarification of exactly what happened or why. And as I was doing one radio show with a guy from who covers the Pittsburgh Steelers, said, really doesn't matter because he's not coming back. And that's the saddest part of the whole thing, is that death is for those of us who are living, you have to basically come to grips with the idea that people that as you go through life are going to pass away. And this is most unfortunate, a 24-year-old guy who, forget about being a football player, had so much of life in front of him, presumably could have had, kids, may have had a great NFL career. We just never know how his story was supposed to play out. But definitely a remarkable figure in the course of Ohio State football. You go all the way back to the videos that were posted, I think, for 2008, when he would have been roughly 11 or 12 years old, and he's out there throwing the football around at the Woody Hayes Center, and he's telling anybody who cares to listen that he's going to play college football at Ohio State. And 8 years later, he made that dream reality. Signed with the Buckeyes 2016 class. Urban Meyer was the coach, and redshirted, then was a backup in 2017, got into the Michigan game, became a bit of a folk hero for pulling Ohio State's bacon out of the fire there at Ann Arbor in relief of an injured JT Barrett. Then took over as the starter in 2018, beat out Joe Burrow for that job, obviously, and put up records, almost 5,000 yards passing, 50 touchdowns for a Big Ten record. And, kind of brought Ohio State football and the offense into the modern era with the way that they were able to throw the football in that 2018 season. Obviously, they went 13-1, lost at Purdue, was the only loss, kept them out of the college football playoff, did come back and win the Big Ten, went to the Rose Bowl and beat Washington in his final game. And he and Urban Meyer kind of rode off into the sunset there in Pasadena together. Then he went off to the NFL. Didn't go very well for him at Washington, but 3 or 4 years in, was hoping to resurrect his career, fighting for the starting job to replace Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. And as we said, tragically lost his life in a traffic mishap there in Florida early Saturday morning around 6:30. Interstate near Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And as we said, the Florida Highway Patrol hasn't told us much of anything other than he died when he was hit by a dump truck. And we don't know any more details than that right now.
Yeah, I got the news. I was on my way to Massillon to cover a quarterback camp and started hearing some things via text messages. And, you hope that the people who are telling you these things are, mistaken, and then you get more information, and it's then you realize that they're not mistaken. And who was at this quarterback camp? None other than Ryan Day, because his son RJ was participating in it. So if you're a father of an athlete at a camp, it doesn't matter. You're a father first and a head coach or position coach or whatever second. So Ryan Day was there, and he was on the phone. He was on the opposite side of the field, and you could tell he was distressed. And yeah, it was a gut shot, because it just seems like he was at Ohio State yesterday. And as somebody who was just only 24 years old, he was at Ohio State yesterday. So, the memories of his exploits are fresh. The memories of his $1 million smile are fresh. There are players on this team that played with Dwayne Haskins. So there are a lot of people around the Ohio State community that are shocked, sad, numb. I don't know what the words are to really describe it, because I think everybody will go through the process in their own way. You go back and you think about the 50 touchdown season that he had. You think about the Big Ten championship win over Northwestern, where he throws that late touchdown against Northwestern, to secure his place in history. I've read a lot of great articles out there and pieces that without Dwayne Haskins, is there Justin Fields? Is there a CJ Stroud? He really marked a different era in Ohio State quarterbacking, and that's not to take anything away from the countless young men that played the position before him. But Ohio State really pivoted into a different type of offense because of Dwayne Haskins. And I go back and I've told the story, Ohio State and Dwayne Haskins almost didn't happen. He was going to go to Maryland. Ohio State was enamored with Jared Guarantano. Guarantano commits early to Tennessee. Ohio State's unable to move him off of there. Ohio State moves around and ends up with Dwayne Haskins. But fate intervenes multiple times. Joey Burrow, Joe Burrow now, or Cincinnati Bengals Joe Burrow, fell behind on the depth chart. He dealt with a hand injury at some point, and because of that, Dwayne Haskins moved ahead, and it was Dwayne Haskins that was inserted into that Michigan game that Steve mentioned. A lot of things could have happened differently, and I don't want to belabor the point of some of the insensitive comments that I saw on social media, but he was so much more than just this person that kind of flamed out with the Washington football team at that time that didn't have a successful start. And I think that people that just try to put him in that box only as that is his legacy on this earth in his 24 plus years, I think that's a cruel disservice to everything that Dwayne Haskins meant to everybody.
Yeah, I think we all have tons of memories. One of the last memories was being at an Ohio State basketball game and Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields sitting together while Ohio State was in the either having recruited Justin Fields, or he had already decided to transfer to Ohio State. But Dwayne Haskins played a part in that and bringing Justin Fields to Ohio State. Kevin talked about all of the things that had to happen and almost didn't happen. I remember talking to Tristan Wallace in June of 2015. He was Ohio State's committed quarterback in the 2016 class. And had he not decided I want to play receiver and decommitted, Ohio State doesn't probably go and get Dwayne Haskins and end up with Dwayne Haskins. And that was, maybe fate interceding or something like that. The bowl game in 2016, it would have been the Clemson game. Or that's the time when there's a media day, you get to go talk to anybody you want on the team, and trying to talk to both Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins, but they were busy playing video games together. Like, all the players are there, but those two are like battling it out on NBA 2K or something, and you're trying to talk to them while they're playing. And these two guys are eventually going to be competing for the biggest job in the Big Ten, and they've remained close. The Joe Burrow goes down with the injury with the Bengals, and on the other sideline is Dwayne Haskins, I believe, with the Redskins at that time, and he walks out to midfield to see how he's doing. All of these different kinds of memories, and then being in the press box at Michigan in 2017 when JT Barrett goes down and Dwayne Haskins walks out on the field and takes care of everything, and you chuckle about it. You're laughing about it at the time because it was just the way he did it. And then after the game, you got Dwayne Haskins in the post game, you got JT Barrett in the post game, you got Urban Meyer there, and Dwayne Haskins was like the calmest of them all. And this was nothing new, except it was brand new and it was unbelievable. And it was on the road against Michigan and he saved the day. It was no big thing for him. And just so many different experiences with him during the 2018 season, whenever, like so many times, it's usually like one-on-one interviews or like one at a time, rather one player at a time. So many times in that 2018 season, it would be a group of wide receivers all together, a wide receiver and Dwayne Haskins together. Like he was with his receivers a lot during that year. And when it was time to talk with the media, and then, just the way he had to play in 2018 because they couldn't run the ball and they couldn't stop anybody. He had to be almost perfect that year, and he damn near was.
Yeah, as Steve mentioned, something like this happens, and you have all the questions as to why, but the circumstances being what they are, as Steve also said, it doesn't matter now.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. He's gone, and him
the
stepping on the field against Michigan, delivering that pass. That's the first memory I have of Dwayne Haskins is just the Austin Mack pass on 3rd and 13. And then from there, they erase a deficit at the Big House and save a Big Ten championship game appearance because of him.
It sounds like there were about 500 people that came to Ohio Stadium last night for the vigil, including a lot of former players who spoke, Master Teague and Cardale Jones, I think, among others. And Dwayne's wife, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Calabria, I don't know, Calabria, I don't know how you pronounce it, through the Pittsburgh Steelers, put out a statement and thanked everybody for their support in this difficult time, and said that there'll be a celebration of life for him next Friday, April the 22nd at the Allegheny Center Alliance Church in Pittsburgh, with a visitation at 10 a.m. and then a service from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that'll certainly be a very emotional time, I think, for friends, family members, teammates. I imagine there'll be a strong Ohio State contingent that goes over to Pittsburgh, Ryan Day, I presume, and any number of others that'll go over to pay their last respects to Dwayne Haskins and to comfort his family and his wife as well. And his little sister, I think, might have been Coach Rivera from the Redskins, who obviously had him. And he said one of the first people he thought of when this happened was Dwayne's younger sister, because he knew how close they were. And, you just think about everybody who's dealing with this in the public eye. It's just so difficult. I mean, when one of us lose a family member, it's a private matter. But for these people, they're having to grieve and to do all this in the public eye, and it just makes it so much more difficult. So, you worry about it, and you hope that they're able to get through this without too much more of it being a tragedy or a total thing in their life that just, they're going to be marked by this for the rest of their lives, certainly, but, get through this difficult time is the best that they can.
Yeah. When you hear the age 24, that's, leaving us at that point, that's wrong on so many levels. But then when you hear on top of that, father and husband, and know that additional lives were impacted because of those relationships, that it makes it even sadder. Tom Brady, Drew Brees, we could go down the list of great all-time Big Ten quarterbacks. Dwayne Haskins is the all-time single-season touchdown leader in the history of the Big Ten with 50 touchdown passes. All right, appreciate everybody's comments in the live chat concerning Dwayne Haskins. And, of course, we could go on for hours, or we could cut it right here because, in a sense, nothing more can be said and needs to be said. I think we all were hit hard by that news on Saturday. All right, going forward, we're going to talk some Ohio State football as we always do. And of course, the boys are on the field practicing and gearing up for 2023. And also the coaching staff is preparing for 2022, but thinking about the 23 class going forward as well. So Kevin, the commitment of running back Mark Fletcher out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, is a top 10 running back in the nation. Definitely a good get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are, immediately are concerned about what that means for other running backs, more so than the guy that they just landed. This is going to be a two-man running back class, in my opinion. No, it doesn't mean that Ohio State is out of it with Richard Young. Cedric Baxter's in the mix too. I think that Richard Young is a more likely target than Cedric Baxter, but you never know. I don't know if I would have said 14 days ago that I would have put Mark Fletcher into this class. So, you're getting a guy 6'1", 225, has, some of the good attributes of Carlos Hyde in him. He is a great pass catcher. He is a very physical runner. He runs downhill well. He's probably not going to be the guy that's going to make you look silly with the juke move, but he's the guy who's going to make you look silly as he tramples you and picks up 12 more yards on the run. He plays at American Heritage High School. He plays, really in one of the best divisions of high school football in the nation. So he's going against dudes. I mean, sometimes you see a guy who puts up numbers and you're like, well, who's he playing? And he's not really playing against anybody. Mark Fletcher's playing against everybody. He plays for South Florida Express, the 7-on-7 team. And while running back is not necessarily a position that is highly productive in 7-on, he's out there catching passes just to show his ability to catch passes. And that's on a team with Brandon Ennis and Carnell Tate and some young guys. So the fact that they're finding the ball for him with all of those other dudes out there says a lot. So this is a huge win for Ryan Day, for Tony Alford, a big get. And now with two members of South Florida Express, with Cedric Hawkins already in the fold as well, attention turns to some other guys. And while, I don't expect somebody saying, well, I'm going to go to a school just because two guys that I play 7-on-7 with who aren't from my hometown are there. No, that's not necessarily going to be the case, but it sure doesn't hurt either.
Hey, worked with Thad Matta when he went and landed all those dudes with Greg Oden and Mike Conley all playing on the same AAU team. Daquan Cook, that was if you can grant yourself a pipeline with a 7-on-7 team, the South Florida Express is not a bad way to go. And Fletcher, what I like about him is he's big. He's maybe not the fastest guy, but he's fast enough. He doesn't really get caught per se, but he can also get skinny and get through slim margins, and is just, I think exactly what you're looking for in the Big Ten. And, he won't be asked to be anything immediately because you do have Travion Henderson next year. Hopefully you have Mayan Williams and Evan Pryor, but it won't be long before you're going to have a chance to be the 1B to whatever Ohio State has at 1A. And as we saw last year, Travion Henderson started out as 1B, ended up as 1A, and Fletcher could do the same before too long.
Talking Buckeyes with all of you here, the voice of college football. Appreciate you all being here. I see that Dylan Raiola, the 5-star quarterback, who's arguably the best in the nation for 2023, is visiting Ohio State. He has legacy connections to Nebraska. Can you imagine them landing a number 1 quarterback in the country? That would be unheard of. Any thoughts about the 2024? Thank you, Kevin. 2024, absolutely. So, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Ohio State looks like it could be in a position to land its 24 quarterback before its 23 quarterback. And I know that there are going to be the people out there who's going to be like, well, if you're a 23 quarterback and you're frightened by a 24 quarterback, we don't want you. Well, it's at some point we've talked about before on the show that year in and year out, if you keep landing guys that you may not get a 5-star every single time because of the depth, and if the guy who's already a year behind you is in the class, what does that mean? I never was going to say that Ohio State was going to get Dante Moore. I had the chance to see Dante Moore at the Elite 11 camp. He, made sure that we all knew that he was born in Cleveland, was from Ohio, grew up as an Ohio State fan. I think he ends up at Notre Dame, if we're being quite honest. But what does this mean for 23? Ohio State, Raiola, and then there's, Jaden Davis was the other top quarterback in the class. Ohio State seemed to be in really good position with Jaden Davis. And I was producing a podcast with Bill Green and Mark Gibler, and they said that if Ohio State ends up with Raiola, Jaden Davis was held back a year. I think it was one of those athletic holdbacks, just for athletic purposes. Maybe you see if Jaden Davis can get his academics done, and maybe he becomes your 23 quarterback. I don't know. I mean, I think that's the situation where everything falls perfectly. That's a one-outer in poker. I mean, you're not necessarily counting on that one-outer to happen for you. But Raiola's the dude. I mean, he is very talented, and I don't see him being the kind of kid too that if you land him this far in advance, that it's going to be white knuckling until you sign him here in like 11 million days when that happens. And I think it's very important too to know who the quarterback is in a class in terms of being the leader of the class. I mean, Ohio State's doing just fine in 23 without a quarterback committed, but you sit there and that's your first commitment in 24. That certainly sends a message when you have young guys out there like JoJo Trader and Jeremiah J.J. Smith and some guys like that as you're trying to put it together. And, it sure doesn't hurt your 23 receiver recruiting as well with Tate and Ennis and guys like that.
I agree with what Kevin's saying there on Raiola. I mean, you have a chance to land him. You do it every day. Chandler, Arizona, 6'3", 225 pounds, right out of Central Casting, it sounds like. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, USC, all up there for him. And number 8 overall in the composite, and number 1, according to 24/7 Sports, number 1 overall on the 24/7 Sports board for 2024. So, you can always rent a backup quarterback in the portal if you need one. I mean, you're going to lose Stroud, obviously, after this season, and you hope you have McCord and Brown in the fold for 2023. But for depth, if you need it, you can probably find somebody who can take third-string reps in 2023 if you don't end up signing a 2023 quarterback, which I would not advise that, certainly. But if that's push came to shove, what happened. But to me, just a tremendous upside here on Raiola. I know that there have been some crystal balls for USC in our network, and Steve Wiltfong came out with one for Ohio State. So I'm not sure what Steve Wiltfong is going by, but like what Steve Wiltfong is smoking on this one. And, we'll see. I mean, this just falls right along the lines. I mean, with Quinn Ewers and all the other top quarterbacks, Brown, McCord, Stroud, that they have taken under this head coach. It's been one after another, and that's how you do it if you want to stay at the top of college football.
It's going to be – we don't know exactly when this would pop. I think he said maybe by the before his season starts, maybe something like that. It will be interesting to see what happens with the 2023 class. And, yeah, there has been speculation even well before Dylan Raiola that would Jaden Davis reclassify to 2023. I think the thing that we need to remember is Ohio State really wasn't in on C.J. Stroud until the summer, of the Elite 11 and the opening that time. They certainly weren't in on Devin Brown until the winter, the fall. And here we are in the spring. So there's still plenty of time for somebody to emerge. I know there's the belief that 2023 doesn't look at 2024, and the kids this year don't look at next year. I think quarterbacks are probably different though, and they tend to look at the class before them, the class possibly coming. And I think you're going to know who is already committed at your position because opposing coaches are going to tell them. Like why would you want to go? Do you know who they have in 24 at Ohio State? Why would you want to go to Ohio State? So the 2023 quarterbacks are going to have to deal with that. Ohio State's going to have to deal with that. But what Ryan Day is constantly pitching is the development that happens at Ohio State. And so far, they've had proof of that. There's been it's evident you're going to have three straight quarterbacks drafted in the first round, and it's the proof is there. And so then obviously only one can play, but how patient can quarterbacks be? And you don't want to skip a class. It's hard for them to ever keep more than just 3 quarterbacks on the roster at one time. So if you have to skip a class, it is what it is, but you can't because players are transferring anyway. So the guy you don't get in 2023, somebody else is going to transfer, and then you're going to be down to 2 scholarship quarterbacks. So you just got to find a guy who is, the best you can, the best player you can find who is also the most willing to deal with that kind of quarterback room. And Devin Brown was perfect because he doesn't care about competition. He relishes it. That's what he wants. And he also wants that development. And when you find those kind of guys, you can win with those. You can certainly play with those guys, and they end up leading your program pretty well.
We went pretty far in depth on the attributes of A.J. Harris here recently, so we don't need to do that. So check out the last few weeks live shows here at the Voice of College Football. Again, most of the content stays fresh from week to week, so check out the previous shows if you missed them. But Sue is asking about A.J. Harris in regards to if there's any word out there that he's starting to lean in another direction.
You make a coaching change, things happen sometimes. I think, though, that Ohio State's done a good job to try and stay in it, but for whatever reason, it seems to be trending in another direction. But just to go back to something that Tony said a couple minutes ago, Ohio State wasn't in it with C.J. Stroud until Ohio State was in it with C.J. Stroud. So you just, recruiting is something that moves around a lot. And just because something is happening today doesn't mean that's what's going to be happening in a week or a month or 6 months. But, right now I would take the field over Ohio State with A.J. Harris. And it happens. I mean, it just is one of those things. And I could go back 365 days ago and sit there and list Kristen Miller and guys like that I figured that absolutely were going to be in Ohio State's class. So it happens.
We've got a college football discussion going on 24/7, 365 on Discord. So head on over to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV, and sign up there. I send you a link, and we've got about 55 in our Discord currently, and would love a larger contingent of Ohio State fans. So take over the Discord. This is your opportunity. So get on over there, Patreon, sign up there. I get you the link. You can talk college football all the time. All right. If we've got no other questions concerning the Buckeyes or any other topics that you guys would like to hit on, anytime you want to get sports fans riled up, you rank teams and players and coaches. So I did that recently. I went through all the Power 5 coaches. I ranked each conference first from either 10, 12, or 14, whatever the case might be, all the way up to number 1, of course. Then I threw them all together. So let's, I'll take you through our national rankings just as it pertains to Big Ten coaches. Why don't we do that? You guys tell me what you've got. I opened up the phone lines the other night, and after 4 hours, I said, okay, we can't talk about this anymore because this gets people riled up. So we will start, let's see, with our first Big Ten coach. So going from bottom to top, and the Big Ten pretty favorable in coaches rankings. So I've got to go up the scale a bit. So 65 in the Power 5, including Notre Dame. And here's number 14 in the Big Ten, Scott Frost at Nebraska. What do you guys think?
Wow. The proof is in the pudding on that. Nobody's done less with more. I don't know.
I feel bad for the guy. Nobody finds more ways to lose
games
painfully than Nebraska. And I credit close wins to the coaches, and also kind of blame the coaches on close losses. So
snatching defeat from the jaws of victory time and time and time again.
I disagree with Steve when he says less with more. I think it's just less with less. They don't
Less with less.
I mean, it's not like they have had just 4 and 5 stars up and down the roster. But the thing is, they think they find something. Oh, Calabrasca, we're going to go recruit California, and then all those guys flame out, and then it's. I mean, 51 feels low. I mean, but I think that's because you get lost thinking about UCF Scott Frost or something, and then you go in and yes, they were the best 3-9 team in like the history of history last year, but they were 3-9, and I don't care. I mean, lose a game by 1 or lose a game by 100. I mean, it doesn't change your record.
Is getting lost thinking about UCF Scott Frost the same as getting lost thinking about Super Bowl Jim Harbaugh? I just had to get my shot in there.
Oh Lord! Somehow I'll get blamed for that comment.
No.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I don't disagree that. I mean, he's probably in the bottom 15, but he's completely turned over his coaching staff. It's kind of a now or never situation for him.
Yeah, I think Trev Alberts is ready. If it doesn't happen this year, he's got to go.
We'll see. He's no longer tied to Adrian Martinez, so I think a lot of that has brought him down. But Casey Thompson is their guy right now, I think, and we'll see. He wasn't much different at Texas, I don't think either. So can he get more out of him at Nebraska? Just have a quarterback that doesn't lose you games and make that costly mistake, then maybe coaching can win it for them.
I'm more of a believer in Casey Thompson than I ever was Adrian Martinez. And I don't think that's a jump to Bryce Young level, but I think it's a substantial or decided improvement. Casey Thompson, I watched the spring game on Saturday. He made a throw the very first play of the game. He threw an out route. Guy was double covered. The other defensive back tried to undercut the throw, and he was able to, just based on velocity and accuracy, out throw the two defenders. And I thought, Adrian Martinez has the arm strength. I've seen plenty of his play through the year. He can make that throw, but he's so scattershot is he makes it about 3 out of 10 times because it's high, it's somewhere. But yeah, he can make the throw, but he usually doesn't. So yeah, Frost, at some point you got to rank based on, and this is less legacy and this is more about what's going on right now. How would I rank them right now? And again, that 3-9, if you turn the scoreboard off, is pretty impressive because they're hanging with Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State on down the line. But
Oklahoma.
At some point, your record is what it is. So there it is. Scott Frost, and it's not like he was chugging along in Nebraska going 8-4, 7-5, and then all of a sudden, okay, they had an unlucky 3-9. At some point, this has to tell you something about the head coach. All right. Mike Locksley. I don't know why he was even hired to begin with, but he's starting to make some amends and make some progression. But at the same time, even though 7-6 looks pretty good with a bowl win, the place where Maryland is versus everybody else that counts in the Big Ten is still he still lost by 50 points to Ohio State and by 5 touchdowns to Iowa last year. He's still getting stomped by anybody that matters.
I was going to say, what would they do in the West? But we kind of saw in the Iowa game. But I think maybe they're shinier than Nebraska. Like they have some offense, and they have a quarterback, and they have receivers, and they have skill talent that allows you to go 7-6 or whatever. But yeah, if I'm not going to die on the Mike Locksley versus Scott Frost hill, so you can move on to Kevin.
I was going to say I would take Scott Frost 11 out of 10 times over Mike Locksley because I see Mike Locksley as somebody who can recruit, which I'm not sure if Scott Frost can. I mean, I think Mike Locksley can recruit better in Maryland than Scott Frost can at Nebraska. But I think that in terms of a game day coach, I like Scott Frost a lot better. I remember some things, Alabama, rehabilitation time for his, when he was in New Mexico and I just don't think he's a very good coach. I just really don't. I hadn't even thought of him, but this is my first disagreement with Mark, and we're only splitting hairs over 50 and 51, but I'd have him flipped.
Well, before we let Steve go, Kevin, that's actually a decent point. If I was to take a coach, I would take Frost. Yeah, maybe 9 out of 10 versus the 11 out of 10, but I'm taking Frost over Locksley, but I'm trying to weigh okay, he's recruiting in the top 15 to 20 in the country, and I know it's easier to do it there, and he just went 7-6 and won a bowl. So I'm trying to weigh what actually has happened recently versus, I take Frost. But my opening comment was, I don't even know how he got the job. He went like 3-31 in New Mexico. And on top of that, he had like 2 pretty serious off-field issues there. And I don't know how he gets a Big Ten head coaching job, but here he is, and he's got a chance to build on what he's done so far.
Yeah, after the disastrous DJ Durkin run, they turned to a guy that had issues at New Mexico. So, like whatever movie that was, Samuel L. Jackson, we reap what we sow. But maybe that was Pulp Fiction. I don't remember. But at any rate, he is accurately ranked here. Whatever.
So we are
very bottom of the rung spot they've got him in. He is accurately ranked.
So we're up to number 12 in the Big Ten, and this is pretty high nationally at this point. And if you love enthusiasm, this is your guy.
Oh man. Well, he didn't parlay 2020 into much of anything in 2021, and I know the quarterback situation turned out to be just an untenable mess. And he's a defensive coach first, and Penix was a once in a lifetime quarterback for them, and they, he got hurt and it didn't work out, but he may have had his best year he's ever going to have at Indiana, the way last year looked to me, because they weren't capable of doing anything last year. They got nothing out of the year before. So this is a big year for him. They need to have a bounce back year in 2022 and get to a bowl game somehow. And it's going to be kind of hard, I think. So good defensive coach, but you don't have the athletes typically to compete with the top 3 or 4 in the Big Ten East on a year in, year out basis. And, they may have missed their window. I don't know.
You sit there and you put it all together in 20, which is the odd COVID year. You lose your DC. Your bones are as a defensive coach, but you lose your DC and your defense kind of falls apart. They lose one of their 2 stud receivers. They just can't have any success at the quarterback position. I agree. I think that they missed their window. I think Tom Allen I think he's a pretty decent coach at face value, but Indiana is such a difficult place to find any sort of prolonged success at. You can sit there and recruit Indiana well, and that's still not going to get you a whole lot. So it's going to be difficult. And I don't know. I think maybe nationally 34 is a little bit higher than where I'd have them, but I think that 12 in the Big Ten, I think that might even be a little bit low. I got 1 or 2 jokers in there that I think are that you're going to probably have way too high.
I feel completely betrayed by Tom Allen based on what happened last year. So 34 seems very high for me right now, based on what they did last year after having so many expectations, and then he just lost control of the entire program. So we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting what they got. Connor Bazelak and Jack Tuttle battling for quarterback. Both of those guys think they should be starting. And will they be able to find one guy, or will it just be this thing where they keep going back and forth? And they've got the kid who played last year, the true freshman who came in and ran the ball some. So generally when you have a program like this that has a bunch of quarterbacks, we see it with Maryland so many times, they all play because they all either get injured or they don't play well. And so I'm wondering if we see the same thing from Indiana.
Yeah, it was a disaster last season. I didn't want to discount that he took over basically a 4-win program and he won 8, and then he had the 2020 season. So he did put 2 solid seasons back to back of 8-5 and 6-2. And he just put together his best recruiting class in the history of Indiana football. All right. Just a rung higher, Jeff Brohm, Purdue, who's had kind of an interesting run with the Boilers, but it seems to be on the upswing.
Well, you look at the wins. I mean, my goodness, what they beat the number 2 ranked team in the country twice last year, didn't they? Was it Purdue or Iowa and Michigan State, maybe, or Iowa?
Yep.
Yeah, we're both ranked number 2 the week that they played them, and they beat them. That number 2 ranking for both of them was a little high, obviously, although Michigan State did win a New Year's Six bowl game. Iowa, no good at all, as it turned out. I don't know. I like Jeff Brohm. Purdue's a difficult place to win. I don't know. I guess somebody's got to be on this list at some point. How he's below Schiano, the second incarnation of Schiano. I don't know. I think we're going off ancient history on Schiano if he's ranked ahead of Brohm.
33 out of 65. We're kind of right at the midway point. I'll wait to piss off people with the coaches that I think are grossly overrated once we get to them. Rowing the damn boat. I think that if it comes to passing offense, I mean, he needs to be so much higher, but his idea of running the ball is just throwing the ball more. We can't run, so we're not going to run. I think that they're going to be grossly exposed not having a David Bell. I like Aiden O'Connell throwing it, but David Bell was, a kid that Ohio State coveted. I mean, he was that level. They've got some guys that are nice, but they don't have anybody that's going to be great. So I guess we're going to kind of see, what they have there. But I think 33 in terms of 65 Power 5 positions. Without going through and counting it out, I probably might have been a couple spots higher on Brohm, but not significantly.
I can't hate on a guy trying to win at Purdue the same way that Joe Tiller did.
And for all the people that told me that I had him ranked too high, he's 500 at Purdue. He's a game below 500, and his 2 predecessors were nowhere close to that. Danny Hope and Daryl Hazel were nowhere close to that. There's our next Big Ten coach. There you go. Cut loose. Go at it, Steve.
Well, I'll jump in before and just say I think he can do what few others can do at Rutgers, and the jump that Rutgers made in terms of competency was pretty stark. And for Rutgers, that's a huge thing. And I think he's a quality coach. Just gave the Ohio State defense too much stuff in their brains to try to run a solid defense, had them thinking too much. And the 2016 defense was pretty good, but I think I don't have a problem with him here at this spot. Steve.
Yeah, maybe I'm being hard on him. He does have the pedigree of winning there previously, but that was when he was in the Big East. He is not going to win there in the Big Ten. He's got to keep every blue chip player in New Jersey and dip down and get some out of the DC, Philly area, Baltimore, those 3 areas. Even go out to Pittsburgh and get some, and whatever's in New England, he's got to go up there and get some too. So New York City, if there's any there, he's got to have them. So that's he's got to do all that if he has any chance of putting a winner on the field at Rutgers. They support the team tremendously well. We were there for a game this past year, and I was just astounded. I mean, he's got everybody believing that Rutgers is going to have quality football again. They just don't have it. So, and I'm not sure when they're going to. So I saw there was a ranking of Big Ten quarterbacks, and they had Noah Vedral still down as the starting quarterback at Rutgers. And I'm like, you ain't winning nothing with that guy. So, I mean, that's nothing against him or his family or anything else, but they're not any good. So
I don't know. There are a lot of teams in this conference that like to champion mediocrity, and I think that Rutgers could beat a lot of those teams under the right circumstances. So I don't the likelihood of them being able to keep everybody in New Jersey home. No, I mean they go in and kick Michigan out of Massachusetts in terms of recruiting, maybe. But I think that some of there are a lot of teams, especially in the other division, that just are not the same from week to week and venue to venue. And I'm not going to sit there and say that I'm on the Schiano schooner at this point, but I'm very pro Greg Schiano, and maybe one day he will finally discuss the Tennessee situation with us.
Rutgers football was awful forever. He showed up, and I know the Big East was the worst of the power conferences, but still, he lifted Rutgers to be able to play with West Virginia and Pitt and Syracuse and some pretty good football teams during his stay. Certainly Pitt and West Virginia were. And then to Tony's point, when he showed up, they had lost 21 consecutive Big Ten games, and most of those games were by 50 points. Like they were a high school team playing in the Big, and he at least has made them competitive with Northwestern and Illinois and Indiana, and at that level. He's done that in about a year and a half. So that's where I've got Schiano. Okay, this might surprise some people because I at one point had this guy ranked as a top 10 coach in the country.
Oh, yeah.
That was a long time ago. And he's just won a Big Ten Western Division championship, so it doesn't seem to add up, does it? But I've certainly got my points against Kirk Ferentz.
Well, he's got the hardware, the 44 time. He's only been there like 23 years or whatever. I think 98 was his first year, I think. He's got the hardware. You got to say that, even though he's only been there 23 years. He does.
Well, what hardware is that, Steve?
The 44-time Big Ten coach of the year.
Okay. He wins those things. Yeah, I don't even take.
He's got that. So, and he's got a few. He's got maybe one or two Big Ten titles and one or two divisional titles that I
shared.
recall. Two shared, yeah. So, they were really bad when he took it over back in the mid 90s. Hayden Fry had let it go really bad. And I don't know, they're a rich man's Nebraska, I guess, for lack of a better term. I mean, they actually do succeed in getting some people to go there and play football, even though it's essentially, if you put the signs that said Nebraska up on the Iowa campus, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart. So, I mean, it's essentially the same, a farm community with football and a college. So he's at least succeeded where others have failed, namely anybody at Nebraska in the last 20-some years. But they're not elite. There's nothing elite there about it. And moreover, the overtones of racism that come out of there, the tone deafness that comes out of there, him disbanding the committee that was supposed to help him with racism because it was no longer suiting him because the guy was calling for his job. That's not your call, bro. Not your call. We're trying to help you get this thing back where it should be. And just seems like they're kind of like the Castellinis who own the Reds, just tone deaf entirely to what's going on in the year 2022. And they're never going anywhere. They're never going anywhere.
They were a team that in terms of looking at divisions, that maybe 3 out of 5 years, you would put them there just because they would play more fundamentally sound than other teams that might be equally, even maybe a little more talented than them. I think that I don't know how many Ferentzes are on that staff right now, how many of his kids he has jobs for. I mean, I was going to make a joke, but it was political. I'll stay away from that one. It just I think that he's trending downward, but just when you're about ready to say that the game has passed him by, and I'm only talking X's and O's and that, I'm not getting into some of these other issues, then he ends up and hangs 55 on you or something dumb like that happens. So, I won't ever sit there and say that it's over and done for, but Abdul Hodge and Chad Greenway are not walking through that door.
I have nothing to add.
He seems to be winning games at a higher rate than at least people think he's winning more than he is. I called him a number of times an 8-4 coach, and people attacked me, said he's doing a lot better than 8-4. Well, he's 178 and 110. That's not 8-4. That's not even 8-4. And Steve, I'll say, when you bring out to what Nebraska has been doing for the last 20 years, Bo Pelini went 67 and 27. I don't think anybody's confusing Bo Pelini for Newt Rockne. And and what he did the first 5 years was remarkable. He lifted that from 1-10 to they finished in the top 10 in the country 3 consecutive years. And then after that, and we looked at their offensive rankings. This is not a struggle that's been going on for 3 years. This has been going on for 15 years that they've ranked in the 90s and 100s every year in offense. And he doesn't do anything about it. Yeah. There's quarterbacks traveling all over the country in the transfer portal, and he does nothing about a quarterback that threw 9 touchdown passes last season.
He hires another son.
True. He puts his son as quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator, moving him from the offensive line, I believe.
And then they just got a volunteer from Colorado State who's, I guess, going to really coach the quarterbacks. I don't know. All right. One notch up. I think this is the guy Kevin's going to cut loose on.
No.
No? Okay.
I mean,
Bert Beelzebub.
Good, but no, the guy we haven't seen the guy that I'm going to cut loose
He
on.
doesn't
Yeah,
like
I know. Row the boat's coming. But
Yeah.
You know what? I'm glad Bret Bielema is back in the Big Ten. Illinois is a very tough place to win, but is Illinois any different than any other program in the Big Ten West? That's why I think all of those places are tough to win, but all of those places you can win the Big Ten West. So they're all kind of equal. So it's almost a perfect control group, that entire Big Ten West, each program in there. And it's all in its own vacuum, and you can see how guys can do. I think this feels really high though to me. What did they last year? They were 5-7, 4-5 in Big Ten. I mean, that's not bad. So
they beat Minnesota, Penn State, and Nebraska.
Yeah, but Lovey beat Wisconsin. You know, a number top 5 Wisconsin.
That was his first year.
So, yeah, I really like Bret Bielema. I'm glad he's back in the Big Ten. I rank him higher. I want him to be cockier than ever. I want him to bring that all cocky Bret Bielema back.
Yeah, he's a real treat. I'll say that. He's a real treat, no doubt about it. And, you know, if they ever do win some games, he's going to be unbearable to deal with again. I can tell you that. We know that. But he's got fertile recruiting territory there in Chicagoland to go in there and get. If he goes in there and gets 8 or 10 top players out of Chicagoland, maybe half of the top 15 players in that region every year, then he's got a chance to win 8 or 9 Big Ten games, or not Big Ten games, 8 or 9 games in a season. So they're kind of a sleeping giant, a dead fan base, a terrible stadium, remote location, 2.5, 3 hours from Chicago. I mean, I just don't sense anybody cares about Illinois football anymore, if they ever did. So I don't know. It had its day with Red Grange and Dick Butkus, and unfortunately, they're not coming
Ron
back.
Zook. No.
Yeah, the Zucker.
Well,
Aurelius Penn's not coming through those doors, folks.
he's not. I mean, and people want to put Chicago and University of Illinois in the same sentence, and they really shouldn't, because there's the state of Illinois, and then you have about 4 counties in the Chicagoland area, and it's not a feeder. I mean, Wisconsin is just as close. I mean, I think Notre Dame can go in and pick kids out of there more so than University of Illinois can. I mean, Lovie Smith took the program, drove it around in the desert for a couple of weeks, and then just left it there and drove off to the NFL. I mean, I will give Bielema credit for having to go in and try to resuscitate a program that had about 0 fan interest and about 0 depth on its roster, and anything that they've gotten so far has been pretty good. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of shirtless Bret Bielema pictures anymore and those things going on. it's a tough place to win. It's a tough place to win because it's really just kind of turned into a basketball school in a lot of ways. That's where the fan interest is. It is kind of a dumpy stadium, and there's just not a lot to get excited about.
He's probably hoping a couple 8-5s. If he can squeeze a couple 8-5s out of that program, that can move him on somewhere else.
Iowa.
Yeah, maybe. All right, I'll leave it up to you guys in regards to, I know we've hit our time limit and we can do the top half of the Big Ten next week or whenever, or if you guys have a few minutes, it's totally up to you.
I have to run, but you guys can stay.
We'll finish up here.
Save it for next week, then
Tony?
we can do that, and then I can watch my Dodgers game.
Yeah, we can just
I've been watching.
save that for next week, and we can just get a quick word in on the spring game real quick. Noon o'clock Eastern time on Saturday. I think it's on Big Ten Network, I assume. So, we have no inclination yet about the format or what it's going to be. Presumably 2 different teams going at one another.
Is what was on the Ohio State University website. They printed, they had rosters up there. They could.
Oh, they've already split it up.
I mean, they couldn't change it, but this morning I happened to find myself on the university website, and they had an offense roster and a defense roster.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess we'll find out tomorrow what they're thinking. But yeah, who knows? A lot of young guys will get to play. You won't see many of the established players, I wouldn't think. So, in a sense, that'll be good to showcase those young guys. And you want to watch the future of Ohio State football, tune in on Saturday or try to get down to the stadium. I think I'm not sure what the weather is looking like Saturday.
60 and partly cloudy.
Yeah. Perfect day.
Okay, Steve, tell us where people can find you.
Yeah, bucknuts.com, Twitter at Steve Hellwagon, and going to be all over the spring game on Saturday, and wrapping up the spring and starting to look toward the fall. That it'll be it's interesting. Just so much anticipation, I think, for this 2022 season, and we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how they're going to have a memorial or a tribute as well for DWAYNE Haskins on Saturday, what they're planning with that. And we'll keep our eyes and ears open for that.
Kevin.
You can find me on Twitter at Kevin_noon. You can find me on the Big Me Kickoff on YouTube and all of those fine podcasting platforms. Of course, I'm over at BuckeyeScoop.com. We'll have pre- and post-game coverage from the spring game, and I will give the rest of my time to one Tony Gerdeman.
I, for one, am looking forward to a hard-hitting affair on Saturday with many, many mighty tackles and some very severe targeting penalties throughout that game, even though there will only be 2-hand touch, but that's okay. You can find me at Tony Gerdeman on Twitter. The podcast is the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. We dropped one today, which was our 14 bold predictions for the Ohio State spring game. Earlier in the week, we did a spring game fantasy draft, and both of these are exercises in, I don't want to say idiocy, but it's pretty close when you're trying to draft fantasy teams for the spring game and also make bold predictions about stuff that may or may not even be possible.
All right, guys, appreciate it. Thanks for being here, and enjoy the game on Saturday or the 2-hand touch, and we will be back here next week.
Take care.